everyone, welcome back to Trees and Turtles. My name's Imogen and in today's video I'm sharing 6 books which changed my life. If you're not already subscribed, make sure to do that, give this video a thumbs up, follow me on Instagram and let's get started. Right, so the first book is Spark Joy by Kondo, and this book essentially introduced me to minimalism. Now it's not essentially, it's not about minimalism, but it's basically about, I mean, if you haven't encountered the cultural phenomenon that is Marie Kondo, I don't really know what to say to you, but it's basically about simplifying your life by, discerning which, for lack of a better word, figuring out which items bring you joy. So it's basically, it's a decluttering book, but it's also like a way of life, and Marie Kondo has sort of, pioneers the KonMari method, which is basically you hold an item and you're like, does this spark joy? And then if yes, awesome, you keep it, and then if no, it goes in the bin. So you can see how this is not directly minimalism, but nevertheless it really introduced me to the concept of joy in simplicity, which ultimately led me to minimalism. So this is one of the books that I think has changed my life the most, because I read it when I was 16 and yeah, I just have not stopped thinking about it or using the principles in it ever since. And it's been how old am I now? Yeah, it's been 6 years, so read this book. Alright, number 2, this is the only fiction book on the list, Under the Net by Iris Murdoch. So it's Iris Murdoch's first novel, and it basically follows the adventures of its protagonist, Jake, and he sort of navigates the, philosophical circles of post-war London. So it's basically about some dude, and he sort of goes around, having girlfriends and having, philosophical discussions and being broke, and it's not really a narrative novel, it's more of a sort of slice of life novel, because the beginning and end sort of seem very abrupt. The beginning of the book is he's just been kicked out of this house where he's been living with this girl, and then the end is just him examining this sort of bunch of kittens that's just been born, and it doesn't make sense until you read it, and then you're like, oh, I get it. So basically it's the best novel I've ever read, because especially chapter 15 is possibly the best piece of writing in the English language I've ever encountered. Some of the characters are a bit annoying, I will say that, but the book is immensely well written, and it just sort of, it feels like a fever dream. This book does not feel real. You have to read it. Okay, I can't explain it any better than that. Okay, number 3, Educated by Tara Westover. So if you have not encountered this book, then let me recommend it to you, because it's a memoir that basically recounts her journey. So she grew up in rural Idaho, and she was basically in a religious cult. And this profoundly affected her, but the big thing that she took from it was the value and importance of education. So she was basically educationally neglected for a large amount of her life, and she ended up doing a PhD at Cambridge. So an amazing journey there, and it really sort of changed my life because I really related to how she wrote. If you don't know, I used to be homeschooled, so there's a bit of background there. But I loved her approach to life in general, and her writing is amazing. Her story is just astonishing. I read this book at least 3 or 4 times. I have my own copy. I read this book and I was like, I gotta get my own copy. I quite rarely buy books because obviously I'm a minimalist, so this is a really important book to me, and it is quite a harrowing read in places, but definitely well worth it. Alright, the next book is actually a productivity book, because who would I be if I was not going to mention a productivity book on Books That Changed My Life on a productivity channel? 168 Hours by Laura Vanderkam. So it's sort of subtitled You Have More Time Than You Think, and this is a great book, and it actually doesn't take long to read. It's basically a time management book that it challenges the notion that you don't have enough time. And basically the author, she employs a lot of different techniques, but one of them is that she looks at different people who are extremely productive and successful, and she sort of analyses how they break down their time. She talks about time logs, she talks about being productive in small amounts of time, and it just sort of made me rethink my entire approach to time management, because before I read this book I was one of those people who's like, oh, I don't have enough time, and then afterwards I was like, do I not have enough time, or am I not making the things I need to be doing a priority? So read this book. Okay. I have 2 more for you, and the first one is a children's book, Running Wild by Michael Morpurgo, which I'll put here. This is basically, it's kind of based on the 2004 tsunami. So it's basically, there's this kid, and he goes on holiday with his mum, and they go on the beach, and his mum goes for a swim, and he goes for an elephant ride. The elephant, gets spooked, runs off in the jungle with this kid, and then the tsunami comes in, mother, like, no more, and then this kid, like, ends up on this big adventure in the jungle, and it's obviously, like, a very interesting, like, it's an interesting premise, and Michael Morpurgo is a fantastic children's writer, but what it really introduced me to was the concept of, can you believe it, tropical rainforest conservation. So this book, like, really inspired in me a love for the rainforest. So I read this book when I was about 10, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's some really important, like, environmental issues in this book, and now I want to spend the rest of my life trying to solve them. So Michael Morpurgo helped me discover my life's purpose through this book about some poor kid and his elephant in a jungle. So yeah, I think this book, not necessarily, like, widely, well, it is widely relevant, but I wanted to include it because it's specifically important for me. But even, like, as an adult, I would reread this book 100% because it is really well written. And it's a bit sad, but, like, it's just, yeah, it's so well written. Okay, all right. The final book on this list is also, it's also rainforest themed, but it's a bit more, like, grown up. And it is called Rainforest by Tony Juniper. So Tony Juniper is, like, an activist, and he's quite famous in the environmental scene or sphere. And it's called Rainforest: Dispatches from Earth's Most Vital Front Lines. So he's, like, a conservationist, and he, like, tells you in this book why rainforests are important, what measures have been done for, like, conservation and stuff, and then, like, what's going on right now. And it's basically sort of written, it's not exact, it's kind of journalistic, but I read this book in sixth form. It gave me a lot of insights into the sort of current state of rainforest conservation, and it kind of renewed, like, the determination to study it that Running Wild originally inspired in me. So that's all the books I have on this list. Please make sure to share your own book recommendations in the comments, because I would love to hear those. And as a side note, do you like this makeup look on me? Because I was just doing eyeliner, and then I was like, why don't I add some lipstick? So let me know in the comments if you think it looks good, because I could do it for more videos, or I could just not if you don't think it looks good. But anyway, that's a side note. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, follow me on Instagram, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye!